The man was nervous as the TSA eyed the girl. They asked her to remove her bomber jacket. "And your jersey too, please, little lady," the TSA officer said with a smile. The little girl looked nervously over at the man. He looked scared in his eyes. The TSA officer said, "I'll have to have a closer look. Can you come with me?" The man stepped forward, but the officer already had the girl by her arm. Jonathan Banks sat in his seat on the flight from Washington-Arlington to Fort Lauderdale, feeling a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. It had been a long journey, both physically and emotionally. He glanced over at the young girl seated beside him, her innocent eyes filled with wonder as she peered out the window. She was not his daughter, but he had promised her mother that he would protect her. As the plane landed and taxied toward the gate, 30-year-old Jonathan's mind wandered to the events at the airport. The TSA agents had eyed him suspiciously from the moment he stepped into the security line. Standing at 6 feet 5 inches tall with a muscular build and dressed in an army uniform, he was an imposing figure. Would he go through as a normal civilian passenger? The girl, Sarah, stood beside him, holding his hand tightly. They shared no resemblance, but they had formed an unexpected bond during their arduous journey. Jonathan had a feeling that this would happen, but he thought his disguise would be good enough. Would the odd parent-child pair be able to make it past airport security? Sarah passed through the security check without any issues until they discovered something in her backpack. Normally, such a harmless item would have been overlooked, but the agent's suspicion of Jonathan intensified. He watched nervously as they rifled through his carry-on luggage, their eyes widening when they discovered something on him that looked suspicious too. Jonathan's heart sank. How could he have been so careless? He knew the rules, yet the exhaustion had clouded his judgment. One small mistake had made him look like a suspect. The airport security grew even more suspicious, their gaze shifting toward Sarah. Jonathan's worst fears were coming true. They were going to separate him from her. The head of security, a stern-faced man with a graying beard, stepped forward and motioned for Sarah to be pulled aside. Panic washed over Jonathan, but he knew he had to remain calm and composed. He offered no resistance as the security personnel escorted Sarah away, her tiny hand slipping from his grasp. Where were they going to take her? Jonathan's heart began to pound in his chest as the TSA officer reprimanded him about having liquids over 100 milliliters on board. "And she is a child, so you should check her bag yourself," she continued. Jonathan, though apprehensive, maintained his composure. He knew the situation was dire, but he also knew the truth needed to be revealed. As the security team gathered around him, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity, he took a deep breath and began to explain. "My name is Jonathan Banks," he began, his voice steady. "I am an ex-military officer. No, she is not my daughter. But it's not what you think. I never intended to harm anyone." He had the officer's attention now. He seemed to recognize a fellow man of service. Would he be lenient and let him go through? It wasn't time to board yet, and the head of security motioned for him to continue. He was interested in the story or excuse he was about to hear. "Sarah's mother was a dear friend of mine," Jonathan explained, his voice tinged with sadness. "She was an undercover agent working to bring down a dangerous criminal organization. Sarah's father was a member of that organization, and he posed a significant threat to both Sarah and her mother." Jonathan's words hung in the air, the security team exchanging glances, trying to process the gravity of the situation. "I made a promise to Sarah's mother before she passed away," Jonathan continued, his voice filled with determination. "I promised to protect Sarah, to keep her safe from her father and the dangers that awaited her. This uniform, the ammunition, and the fake badge were part of my disguise, a ruse to make us appear more formidable and escape notice." The officer eyed Jonathan up and down. He looked suspicious of him. While the main security personnel focused on Sarah, Jonathan's checked-in luggage was retrieved from the aircraft hold. The officers watched Jonathan with caution. They were curious about his relation to the little girl. Their suspicion turned into certainty. They had caught someone who meant harm. "I'm telling the truth," Jonathan said. "You have to believe me." The head of security, a seasoned man named Agent Reynolds, listened intently. He recognized the sincerity in Jonathan's voice and the unwavering determination in his eyes. "What proof do you have?" Agent Reynolds asked cautiously. Jonathan knew that this time would come. He had a backup plan. Jonathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He handed it to Agent Reynolds, who unfolded it and read the carefully penned words. His face turned from frustration to surprise. He looked up at the security camera in the corner and nodded. It was a letter from Sarah's mother, explaining everything, including the importance of the disguise and the urgency of their escape. Agent Reynolds studied the letter for a moment, his face softening as he absorbed its contents. He looked up at Jonathan, his eyes filled with a newfound understanding. "You took a tremendous risk," Agent Reynolds acknowledged, "but it seems you did it out of love and a commitment to protect this young girl. I will need to verify your claims, but for now I will ensure Sarah's safety. We will find a way to keep her out of harm's reach." Jonathan watched Agent Reynolds and the security team walk away with Sarah. Though uncertainty still lingered, he knew he had made the right decision by being calm. He had exposed himself to suspicion and scrutiny, but he had also safeguarded Sarah from a dangerous world that threatened to consume her. He knew that they would investigate further, but technically, he hadn't done anything wrong. As Jonathan gathered his belongings and prepared to face the uncertain path ahead, he hoped that someday Sarah would understand the sacrifices he had made to keep her safe. He knew the road would be long and treacherous, but as long as he had the strength to protect her, he would never falter. If only she could just see his face, she would be okay. Jonathan tried to watch Sarah through the bustling line of travelers. A female officer had taken her into a makeshift cubicle to pat her down. The man who had aroused suspicion at the airport had now become Sarah's guardian angel, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to overcome them and forge a new, safer future. But would the security see it that way? Jonathan was a burly man dressed in an army uniform, nervously glancing around the crowded airport as he stood in line. Other passengers were starting to stare. The girl, around 10 years old, bore no resemblance to him, and the airport security noticed the odd pairing. A sense of unease rippled through the TSA agents as they watched him approach the security check. As the girl walked through the metal detector, a small beeping noise alerted the security personnel. Suspicion grew when they discovered a harmless juice box tucked away in her bag. Ordinarily, such a trivial item would go unnoticed, but the combination of the bulky man and the incongruous girl made the agents question the situation further. A seasoned security officer approached Jonathan and gestured for him to step aside. "Is that girl with you?" he asked, pointing to Sarah. Jonathan nodded. With a furrowed brow, the officer carefully inspected his carry-on luggage. To their shock and disbelief, they uncovered a taser concealed among his belongings. The realization struck them. Jonathan Banks had something to hide. Concerned whispers reverberated among the security team, escalating the tension in the room. They decided to separate the girl from Jonathan for her safety and to uncover the truth behind the man's alarming possessions. As the main security officer led the girl to a designated area, another officer retrieved Jonathan's checked-in luggage from the baggage area. What would they find inside? Nervous sweat trickled down Jonathan's forehead as he watched the unfolding events. He had thought he could slip through undetected, but his reckless mistake had caught up with him. The security officers unzipped his checked-in bag, and their eyes widened in disbelief at the sight that greeted them. "What the hell is this?" one of the officers asked him angrily. Inside the bag lay a stockpile of ammunition, neatly arranged and hidden beneath a layer of clothing. The implications of such a discovery were grave, and the initial suspicions surrounding Jonathan intensified. Furthermore, a fake U.S. Marshal badge slipped out from a hidden compartment, adding another layer of complexity to the unfolding mystery. "Sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me," he said, and placed his arm on Jonathan's shoulder. The airport buzzed with commotion as news of the alarming findings spread. Jonathan found himself surrounded by uniformed officers, their eyes trained on him with a mixture of suspicion and concern. The young girl, now seated in a separate area, glanced back at him with wide, innocent eyes, unknowing of the chaos she unwittingly became a part of. What would happen to her? Jonathan, feeling cornered, realized that he had no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. With a heavy sigh, he mustered the courage to speak. He explained that he was an Army veteran, discharged years ago, and the girl beside him was his late comrade's daughter. He had gone rogue in a life of organized crime. Both her parents had tragically passed away, leaving him as her legal guardian. As Jonathan continued his narrative, the initial suspicion gradually transformed into understanding. The security officers, though still cautious, listened attentively as he explained his misguided intentions. He revealed that the ammunition was merely a memento from his time in service, a symbolic connection to his fallen comrade. The fake U.S. Marshal badge, he confessed, was a foolish attempt to boost his confidence and authority in a world that had left him feeling lost. Suddenly, a military personnel officer with 2 soldiers on either side appeared. He spoke to the TSA and told him to let Jonathan go through. "This is a top-secret undercover operation," he said. Touched by Jonathan's honesty and vulnerability, the security officers began to empathize with his plight. They understood the desperate measures he had taken to ensure the young girl's safety. A wave of compassion washed over the room as the true nature of the situation revealed itself. After a thorough investigation, during which they verified Jonathan's claims, the security officers reluctantly cleared his name. The military officer saluted Jonathan as they cleared the air of the false accusations. "Thank you for your service," the TSA said. Apologies were offered for the unnecessary distress caused, and they assured him that the incident would be treated with the utmost confidentiality. Jonathan ran over to Sarah, who was waiting for him. "Uncle Johnny," the 4-year-old said with a smile, "you're here." With a mix of relief and gratitude, Jonathan thanked the security officers and embraced the young girl tightly. Though shaken by the ordeal, he was grateful that the truth had come to light, and that they could continue their journey together to a safe place.